Last summer, my wife and I got our hands on about 14 different native wildflower perennial varieties. And we've determined this is going to be kind of our bed. We're going to let it naturalize, and hopefully a lot of these will self-seed. That hasn't been bred out of them. Some of the newer introduced varieties of perennials, people don't want it to self-seed. So the older native perennials are not only are they going to self-seed, they can get much bigger. Okay, how this got started, we decided to see what it would be like to sell plants at a farmer's market. So we potted up hundreds of these native wildflowers, and we figured what better way to know what you're selling than to plant some of them out and see how they establish and perform. As you can see, there's already quite a few trees and shrubs established in here, so depending on how this goes, it's possible I'll end up transplanting out some of them into a different area if they get too large. But I like having a combination of perennials, trees, and shrubs in all our garden beds, so we'll let the plants be our guide over the coming years. Since many of these varieties were new to us, we decided to arrange them by their mature size, placing the shorter varieties in the front and the larger ones towards the back. Okay, let's take a closer look at several of these varieties, starting with the Prairie Smoke. What a fantastic small perennial this has turned out to be. It starts out with these nodding pink bell-shaped flowers, which become really interesting as they transform into these upright clusters of wispy pink plumes. Next up is pasque flower or prairie crocus. The native strain is usually a violet color, but you can also find varieties like rubra or alba in the trade, which have a red or white flower. The pasque flower is one of the first to bloom in the spring, again staying in that 12-inch range, and it's able to tolerate drier soils as well. It'll also thrive in moist soils, but just make sure you have good drainage if that's the case. And it's hardy to zone 4. And like the Prairie Smoke, I also love the feathery seed heads that emerge in the final stages of this flower. They'll remain quite ornamental for several weeks before being dispersed by the wind. Culver's Root, it's a taller perennial reaching heights as high as 5 feet. I also highlighted Culver's Root in an earlier video where I grouped together several other tall perennial varieties that you may be interested in. But check out those candelabra-like spikes of white flowers. This is a great perennial for full sun or part shade, and it'll also draw in all kinds of pollinators. Culver's Root's hardy to zone 3. Next up is Smooth Aster, and asters are one of the best perennials for blooms in the fall. There's quite a few varieties available in the trade, and they're an important plant for pollinator gardens since most other perennials have finished flowering, but boy, not the asters. Eventually we'll be seeing a light blue flower on this native strain I'm planting here. This one can also apparently get some size to it, reaching up to 4 feet, and it's hardy to zone 3. Moving on to lavender hyssop, also known as anise hyssop, due to a licorice scent that's released when crushing the leaves. It has a lavender flower in midsummer, and they're also great at attracting pollinators. It is a member of the mint family, but not considered as aggressive as many of the other mints can be. It looks like this one's going to be extremely cold hardy, down to zone 2 on this one. The cardinal flower is commonly found in wet soils, and we'll see how it's going to do back here since it can get quite dry in this area midsummer. The cardinal flower is great for attracting hummingbirds and butterflies. Apparently the parent plants are said to only last a few seasons, but they are prolific self-seeders. This is another mid-season bloomer reaching 4-foot heights and hardy to zone 4. Next up is a grass that we're going to plant here, a little blue stem. We don't often think of grasses when talking about wildflowers since their flowers are insignificant, but the bluestem grasses offer a nice contrast in the gardens with bluish green leaf colors in the summer, change it to copper and crimson red in the fall. And we'll also get some fluffy white seed heads which are showy into the winter months for seasonal interest. If you're into pollinator gardens, make sure you add grasses into the mix as they're important hosts for many different insect varieties, not only in the summer months but in the winter months for their various life stages. The next one up here is Prairie Blazing Star, and we've got this one growing in several different areas already, and for good reason. Check out these purple flower spikes that emerge in midsummer. So colorful and showy, and the pollinators just love this plant. I'll link to another video in the description I recently did on pollinator plants where I highlighted this blazing star and several other varieties you might like. The Prairie Blazing Star, it'll tolerate a wide range of soils, especially drier soils, and it can reach 5 feet tall and hardy to zone 3. Blue false indigo, also called wild indigo, is an interesting plant that can take a few years to get going. Apparently it spends the early years establishing mostly below ground, and it'll become showier and more developed with each subsequent growing season. And eventually it'll be loaded with blue flowers on a 2 to 4 foot plant that you would swear is a shrub. I think blue is my favorite color, but check out this honey roasted Baptisia variety. I just love these color ranges. The Baptisia varieties are early summer bloomers, hardy down to zones 3 and 4. Okay, the orangish red flowers you see blooming here are blanket flowers in the Gaillardia genus. We added one of these several years ago, and they've been self-seeding themselves throughout this bed. The Gaillardia, or blanket flowers, don't tolerate poor soils, and they get their name blanket flowers since they used to blanket the prairie regions. And right in the middle here, I'm going to plant some native coneflowers, which have a light purple flower, and they get quite a bit taller than many of the compact variety selections that you'll find at garden centers. In fact, these native coneflowers can reach as high as 3 feet. But I'm also going to add in here Cheyenne Spirit coneflower, which is a seed variety that can produce orange, red, yellow, and white flowers. So it's going to be fun to see how this develops. Coneflowers will tolerate a wide range of soil conditions, and depending on where they're planted, can be found in bloom early summer through early fall. We already looked at prairie blazing star, but meadow blazing star is another great plant for attracting pollinators. The main difference here is meadow prefers a moist soil rather than dry, has more open flower heads unlike the spikes on prairie blazing star, and the meadow blazing star is going to be better at attracting the monarch butterflies. Goldenrod is another great late season blooming perennial, adding a flourish of yellow plumes to the fall landscape. Goldenrods are among the top great plants for supporting biodiversity, and they'll tolerate a wide range of soils as long as the drainage is good. They're hardy to zone 3 but can get quite large, up to 4 feet tall, and many of the goldenrods spread by rhizomes and can be considered invasive. But I do believe there are varieties available out there that do not have this invasive quality. So do your research depending on your situation. It doesn't look like much yet, but this area will be a work in progress over the next several years. This photo here is about 3 months later in the month of August. And now that we've gone through a winter, we're into the next growing season. We just finished mulching this bed, and I think that makes such a difference that we put the mulch on a little bit lighter. We want to be able to still have those seeds be able to get contact with the soil. That's important. And on that point, here's a closer look at some new blanket flower and coneflower plants emerging in this center area. And before I let you go, here's a final look at our bed about 1 year later. I think it's looking better now as it's starting to fill in. Some of the early bloomers have finished up already as we're into the month of August, and many of the midsummer and fall flowers will now start to open up. So we'll continue to let these plants establish themselves, come into their full glory, and I'll try to give you some updates over the years as we go through the growth and the progression of this wildflower bed. Thanks for stopping by Garden Hike. I appreciate it. We'll see you again next video.